All right, Americans who care about the issue of life and those who push abortion on women are both looking to probably June, July of this year to finally find out if Roe v. Wade, the 1973 U.S. Supreme Court case decision that legalized abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, and then later the Planned Parenthood versus Casey of 1992, will be thrown in the ash heap of history. Of course, we at the Family Research Council know and believe that unborn babies are created in God's image, distinct from their mothers and deserving of all rights given to those of us that are already born. We believe that life is to be protected from conception. When and if Roe is overturned, the job of protecting life in government will fall on state legislators, doing the hard work of protecting all their citizens, born and unborn. Abortion will not be permanently eradicated by executive fiat, but through legislative bodies. Now, just yesterday in South Dakota, a heartbeat bill, very similar to that in Texas, was introduced, but by the governor, Kristi Noem, there in South Dakota. But pro-life Republicans said, no, we're not going to pursue this. Why? Well, joining me now to talk about this and what is happening on the ground in South Dakota, former House Speaker of the House there in South Dakota is Stephen Haugaard. Stephen, welcome to Washington Watch.
Hello, Tony. Thanks very much for having me on.
All right, so let's talk about this because people are saying, wait a minute. South Dakota is a very pro-life state. You're still in the legislature there as the speaker. You advanced very conservative laws. This Texas heartbeat bill that was put forward by the governor there, the Republicans said, no, we're not going to do this. Why?
Well, this year I'm not on the State Affairs Committee, and that's the committee that this legislation was brought before. And it wasn't presented as a bill. It was brought as some proposed language by the governor's office. And throughout the past several years, of course, there have been a lot of discussions about what kind of legislation could succeed and what should we do, what are the options available. So each year we take some bites at the apple as much as we can and try to move forward any kind of pro-life bills that we can. And we have bills like that this year, just like always, and we'll advance those as best we can. This year, the governor's office brought some proposed language. It was not ultimately in the form of a bill, and there was a proposal to the State Affairs Committee that this be advanced as a bill. It failed for want of a second. And I believe the underlying issue there is the fact that we have ongoing litigation right now that we think has some high potential for success based out of Planned Parenthood versus the previous governors and now versus Governor Noem. That's just the title of the case. But the point of that legislation is to identify a relationship between the mother and the child. And so it's a unique aspect, a unique perspective on how to pursue this in the event that Roe is not successful. So this litigation right now, it's pending in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. I don't believe they've moved it forward on the schedule just because of the fact that the Supreme Court presumably will rule within the next several months on the existing cases before the court. So, when that happens, we'll have a much better idea of what to do as far as advancing new legislation. And I think, if Roe is in essence overturned, the great opportunity every state has at that point is convene a special session, take a look at what the opportunities are, and consider the surrounding states and what are they going to do, then advance new legislation. And that's what I would expect we would do. We would have a special session within as many days as possible to advance a particular bill to protect life.
So this is what some have kind of said, well, what's happening here? The legislature no longer pro-life. That's not at all what you've described here, is that the legislature is being very strategic in that you, before Mississippi, before Texas, had crafted legislation that would go at the heart of Roe, which has been in the judicial pipeline, but not yet received a decision. And so the concern was that other actions could jeopardize that case, which you feel is the best attack to Roe, if the current one before the court does not succeed.
Exactly. This legislation that we have from going back, I think it's to 2010 or 2011, had that perspective of a relationship that needs to be protected between the mother and the child. And so it's gone through a lot of stages, just thousands of hours of preparation and time invested in this, with the idea that if Roe is not overturned at this point, this might be another option. And I really respect Texas for what they did. They looked for an opportunity, they found an opportunity, they pursued that, and that worked for Texas because they didn't have anything else in the pipeline, as you say, that was ready to go. So at this point, when you talk to quote unquote legal scholars, it's oftentimes anybody's guess. But the real concern is that potentially this Texas case is going to fall flat at some point along the way too. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we lose there and then we've lost the case that's been teed up for nearly a decade.
Makes perfect sense to me. Representative Haugaard, I want one final question for you. A little confused by this, but the governor there signing a sports bill, a sports protection bill. I think that's gone into effect now, but it's very similar to the one that was killed last year. What caused her change of heart?
Well, it's not as good as the one we had last year that passed through both chambers, and we laid it on the governor's desk for signature. She chose to veto it. And the only thing that I can perceive there is that the Chamber of Commerce, the Municipal League, the Retailers Association leaned on the governor's office to try to put that to rest. And so then I think when the political winds changed, that's when it was appropriate to bring another bill. There were plenty of bills that were going to be on the table this year to do this again, to give another opportunity. And I think we would have passed it just as well as we did last year. Sadly, on the last year, we couldn't override that veto. And that's just the nature of our legislative body. Although we appear to be very red, we're tending in that purple range more than bright red. So last year we couldn't override the veto. This year it comes back. The governor brought her own bill this year, but it doesn't have the teeth, the substance that the bill did last year. Everybody just wanted to get something across the line so we could be done with this and at least give some protection to girls' sports. And it's denominated as fairness in girls' sports, and that's really what it is. You see across the nation, girls that have great talent and opportunities, they lose those accolades, they lose the opportunity for scholarships, and so this will at least provide some protection there. Yeah. Not as good as what we had last year, but it's still a step in the right direction.
But it does show that citizens can make a difference when they weigh in on issues that they have concerns about. As we said, last year the governor vetoed it. This year, coming with her own bill. And I think in large part that was because people spoke out and said, this is something we're very concerned about. And
well, yeah, last year would have been great if there would have been more of an uproar about it. I think it took everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
And, the bill was through. It was on the governor's desk, could have been law. In fact, I provided some information to her. I said, if you just leave it alone, don't need to sign it. You put your own disclaimer on it. After 15 days, it becomes law. But she chose to veto it anyway.
All right. Well, State Representative Haugaard, so good to talk with you. Thanks so much. We'll be watching developments there in South Dakota continually because you guys are doing some good stuff up there.
Great. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it.
All right.